Dog movies have been a part of cinema since the very beginning. And just about every generation has a memorable dog movie that was marketed to them. But you know, people are just addicted to that emotional roller coaster of falling in love with animals and then one way or another. In fact, like, I'll say right out of the gate, just watching these, it seems a little counterintuitive how much dog is in movies that are meant to be seen by dog lovers. Seems like something terrible happening to a dog is like the centerpiece of all of these movies. Just dangling something you really love in front of you and then just smashing it. But there really are a lot of them, and the thing is a lot of these dog movies are just the exact same thing. That's why I was inspired to put together just this small collection of dog movies that is, at least on the surface, offers us something with like a little more pizzazz. If you see the amount of swag on this spread, there's no way we could ever be let down by these movies, right? Through the 60s and 70s, the essence of a family dog movie was formulating. Old Yeller, Lassie, Benji, the Incredible Journey. And then once we got into the 80s, the genre actually sort of started to wane in its popularity. But at the dawn of the 90s, Bingo comes in like a rocket and does terrible, dirty things to this genre. As far as I can tell, this really may be the first of the suburban family dramedy dog movies that many my age grew up with, like Beethoven, Homeward Bound, and Shiloh, all of which is poured out throughout the rest of the decade, and all of which came out after Bingo came on the scene. Most of the famous dog movies that came before it were almost stereotypes for sentimentality and old-timey decency. Bingo here does this thing where it follows a lot of those same tropes, and almost lulls you into like this false sense of warmth and security, but then it just like violently robs you of anything good-hearted.
One move and the dog gets it!
This whole movie is all about going too far, and it's almost uncanny because sometimes the envelope pushing is almost unnoticeable, but you still just feel this aggressive energy coming out of this. In the beginning, there's this cliche scene of the lead kid meeting the dog when the dog helps him after getting injured, but then you see it happen, and you're like, hey, like that's a little more than you expected. Then a bear attacks him, and he's trapped outside all night, and then when he comes home after nearly dying multiple times, this is his dad's reaction.
I'm gonna rip his arms off.
No, Hal. Remember, you said no more negative attention.
All those scenes that you would expect of healthy bonding between a boy and his dog are replaced with them doing stuff like looking at dirty magazines at the store. You can almost recognize some more traditional suburban family drama where a kid's family ignores his needs and are even cruel sometimes. But the whole thing is just played as a total joke, which I'd love to scoff at, but I actually ended up thinking a lot of these bits were actually pretty funny. The whole bit is that the family's obsessed with the dad's career as a football player, and there's these quirks like how he's trying to deal with athlete's foot in every single scene, and everything in their house, including the molding on the walls, is themed for the team he's on. I mean, even in the end, when the climax is popping off and everything is a matter of life and death, there's a big joke about how the dad's football game is distracting everyone, mom, dad, even the police, from the big problem at hand.
Yeah! Make sure Devlin misses this field goal, and we won't toast the kid! I'll think about it!
It's just not the energy you'd expect when a child's life is at stake. The big plot point is that as soon as our kid falls in love with Bingo, he moves to join the Green Bay Packers, and when they see that the dog is following them, they just keep driving while their kid is screaming in the back.
Speed up, Dad!
Making comedy out of emotional neglect is a pretty bold move, especially for a family movie. I mentioned that the reason Bingo was ultimately left behind was because he was too busy screwing the neighbor's Cocker Spaniel. The way the whole scene actually starts is it totally could have been a really cute, innocent Lady and the Tramp type moment, but they really just couldn't help themselves. Just that pop sound was one innuendo too far. And once the adventure begins, it unfolds that the kid is trying to stop and pee along the way multiple times so that the dog can follow his scent. This kid's interest in urine really did push me to my limits.
Guess that's the best feeling in the whole wide world, huh, boy?
It also goes to like some pretty grotesque places too. Like along the journey, Bingo appears to be saved from trouble by what seems to be a kind man who like takes him in and feeds him. But the plot twist is he cooks and eats dogs and is clearly covered in the blood of his previous victims. And there's a moment here where I sputtered a little laughter when the dogs stick their little paws out with mirrors to see what's going on in the cages. Similarly, there's these goofy criminal goons which pop up, and typically those characters are made to be dopey enough to not appear to be too threatening for little children. And like everything else, they start acting like that's exactly what they're going to be. But then with just more impeccably inappropriate timing, something like this pops up.
You got any chips, lady?
And once again, the movie disarms you with images of children bound and gagged with their families in a closet. Now, while all that's going on, another pretty surreal ongoing joke that plays throughout this movie is that the people in this movie basically treat Bingo like he's just another person. Like, there's a cop that makes him walk the line and gives him a ticket. And then when Bingo is saving the kidnapped family, he literally calls 911. At some point, he gets a job and clocks in. And I might be wrong, but I think it's suggested that his job is cleaning dishes by licking them clean. And then, like, when the dog gets called as a witness in court, this joke starts to really lose all control.
Response to his whereabouts on the day in question.
He's also wrongfully convicted for not speaking up on his own behalf in court and is sent to the penitentiary with everyone else. And it's here where a mini prison movie plays out. Another great opportunity for the comedy to just go a little too far for a kids movie. This is a movie that is truly interacting with its audience. Just being a raunchy spoof movie would be one thing, but this one actually went so far as to actually market to kids and still stay true to its mission of just confusing its audience for the sake of unrecognized comedy. I mean, it's early, but I'm already thinking A for this movie. So get ready for a little whiplash, because the next movie is My Magic Dog, which came out in 1997. Now, this is a TV movie, okay, which not only means it's way cheaper, but it also means that we're putting the rails back up. Okay, no more rough edges allowed on family TV. So that means we're back in full menopausal swing with the sentimentality. Although, to be honest, I don't know if sentimental is like the best word for this. Like, this is a little bit more like trauma feeding. Now that we're back in the more traditional lane of dog movies, you'll notice that they tend to think that the best path to being heartwarming is making everyone sad for 70% of the movie. The kids who bond with the dog always seem like they have to have, well, at least one dead parrot to make sure we know that the kids' bond with the dog is extra important to them. Like, not only is the kid being raised by a single dad, it's his single stepdad. We're already starting with an orphan here. And so you'd expect he's getting bullied by older teens like every young boy in 90s kids movies were. Now his rich evil aunt pulls up and drags him into a custody battle to take him away from the last meaningful adult in his life. And there's this weird point that they make where he can, for some reason, keep the custody, I guess, as long as he's in a relationship with someone.
But if he found someone, it'd be a lot more likely he'd be able to keep me.
Like, at what point does a magic dog movie become escapism and not just like a forcing your face into the sad realities of millions of children? And like the aunt really goes so far as to hire those local teen bullies to break in and steal their stepdad's custody paperwork. And in the process of doing so, they straight knock the whole life out of this dog with their truck while they're getting away. Now, leaving this kid completely destitute of all meaningful relationships. But what can ease the spirits more than some classic 90s digital effects to show the dog's soul coming back from heaven? So I guess he technically still has his dog for now. But even that feels tarnished because now he can talk and has a voice that's giving me like a mild goofy feel.
You talk. I must be dreaming.
This is the welcome I get? Hey, who's your best buddy? Look at me, I'm back.
But for me, I feel like if I knew my dog sounded like this, I just couldn't look at them the same way again. And I have to say they do one of the most egregious things by pretending something is magical because they're invisible. It's the cheapest trick in the book. Not only do you have to not do anything that's actually magical on screen, you have to do less because now you don't even have to coordinate shots with the dog as much. So now the movie is this kid and his zombie dog trying to get his stepdad to go on dates so he doesn't have to go into his aunt's custody. Any efforts at lightening things up in this movie, fat jokes and all, are all completely overshadowed by how depressing the whole context is.
Last time you had a hot meal.
Geez, let me see.
I feel like the only joy anyone can take from this movie is just how central pizza is to these people's lives.
Starved. Can I get pizza?
Longo, have your pizza.
Here's some pizza dough.
Oh boy. We'd better get pizza and talk.
I would have never expected to be so eager to see Russ Tamblyn doing a top-notch Italian accent.
I'm so sorry, poor Lucky.
Constantly giving these people pizza to lighten the mood. Now, overall, this was simply unpleasant to watch. These old-fashioned movies would at least give us a little bit more quality time to enjoy with the dog and the kid bonding and having fun together. This we're just dealing with custody battles and adult dating the entire time. And bummer if you actually felt hope when that dog came back to life, because these movies never let us have anything.
Goodbye, Toby. Thanks for being my best friend.
So Ghost Dog, overall, you're diving down quite a bit. You're going to the D level.
Stupid dog just ate all my burritos.
Okay, rolling into 2003, we're in the millennium and we have another broke-ass TV movie. Now, before we spoil the moment, let's just take a look at the beauty of this cover. That's just the coolest golden retriever I've ever seen. But like, is this movie going to live up to this image? Well, let's just say it isn't exactly a good palate cleanser for the last one. There's a big promise of something cool, a cyber dog. But once again, it's another TV movie, which means I'm guessing cyber dog looks a lot more like a normal dog than it does the cyber poochie I wanted to see. The setup for this is almost exactly like Magic Dog, except the kid is taking it way worse. I mean, he's just in tears every night thinking about his dead dad. He's getting robbed by bullies, and his mom is passively roasting him about not having any friends on a day-to-day basis.
You know, if you want to have friends over, that's okay. That's cool.
Yeah, I know.
At this point, I just feel like the writers thought the fastest way to get an audience to bond with a dog in a movie is to make it a vulnerable child's only source of joy. And then they just murked the little creature with a raging vehicle. And the harshness of the situation is kind of softened by the hilarity of this truck coming from absolutely nowhere. Well, these people are all straight in the middle of the woods. Not a single road in sight, not a single motor sound to be heard, right up until this thing just BLOW! The catch is the dog actually saved an eccentric science dude played by Judd Nelson, who very conveniently has a bunch of revolutionary technology in his Mega 2000 science lab that he can use to save the dog. So this guy, who is moved by the dog's sacrifice, really just starts to give up his entire life's work, just pouring all the technology that he's developed so far into saving this dog's life.
Well, we'll use everything we have, prototypes and all.
Everything. Your life's work.
And it's here where we learn that the kid's mom is an absolute cold-blooded savage.
Rex is going to be as good as new, right?
Yes. Maybe better.
I hope so.
It was just so perplexing. It's like she got the casting wrong in her head or something, because at the moments when the people are sacrificing for her and her son like the most, those are the moments when she starts acting the most like a movie's villain talking to a henchman.
Call me when he's better, otherwise don't call me at all. Understood?
Understood.
And honestly, this whole extended drama of, is the dog gonna wake up, is he not? And then he does wake up over the sound of the kids weeping over his lost hope. It felt like we were just wasting opportunities for us to see more of the dog do sick stuff like jump through chain link fences to save the kid from bullies or something. But on the bright side, all of this all really turned out to be a really solid relic of pop futurism. You know, it really wasn't an aesthetic that lasted all that long. And we have to treasure every opportunity to see gadgets that look like this. And the digital interfaces that look like this. Can you believe that this is what the dog's vision is supposed to look like? Like, imagine getting robot eyes that have a 3D porta potty in the corner at all times. And now that everyone has finally stopped crying, the bad guys pop up. And man, this guy really makes me uncomfortable. I guess some would say that that just means it's good casting, but there's just a limit, okay? Like, if I as an adult am getting jump scares every single time he shows up on camera, and I'm just getting totally cold chills watching him kiss someone, that's too much for a kid's movie. Alright, so now, what kind of fun do we get to have now that the dog has robot powers? Well, the first thing that happens is when the dog sees the kid after he's faced death, he goes to jump on him and straight breaks his wrist because he's bionic.
Oh my god, are you okay? Get that.
Then the mom just whisks him off and is like, we're taking him to the vet.
There's something not right. But we will take him home tonight and then we'll take him to the vet in the morning.
But Mom, he didn't.
Like, if this dog acts like he likes you again, he's getting euthanized. But honestly, besides just saving the kid from the bullies at one time, he really doesn't do a whole lot. And like, the mom simply just wouldn't stop being an absolute pain in the ass to Mr. Science Man.
You know, guys like you frustrate me. You know what I mean? You seem like a decent guy. You know everything that there is to know about machines and science, but you don't have a clue about what's really important in this world.
I mean, there's like a moment where it gets really weird.
You know, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be talking to you like this.
No. I deserved it.
You ever think about spitting on me? And this is the lady he's obviously going to fall in love with at the end, because his current fiance ends up trying to kill him after getting shot with a drugged dart for wasting his technology on the dog. Well, I mean, the moment that brings everyone together is the moment when the villain tries to send the kid through a meat grinder on a meat hook. How will the cybernetic dog save him from this situation? Something cool, right? Okay, Cybermutt, you definitely hold a little more aesthetic importance than I think my magic dog. So I guess I'll move you up just a little beyond that, probably to the C tier. This is all subject to change because we're still early, but I think that works for now. Okay, so I'm actually pretty excited to talk about Karate Dog now. This was a movie that came out in 2005, and would you believe it's another TV movie? But this isn't just any TV movie. This is a Stephen Paul production, which is interesting for a lot of reasons that I sadly just don't have the time to explain all of right now. But I can say that he's a new money producer that's made a lot of strange direct-to-video movies. And these productions have been known to get pretty classic talent in Hollywood and getting them to do really strange things with their careers. For instance, you have someone like Jon Voight, who's kind of like classic Hollywood, and at some point in time he just randomly dedicates his entire future career to their movies.
Pleasure to meet you.
They existed in somewhat obscurity up until they came out with Baby Geniuses, which is where they made their bag. But you can notice that in the 2000s, doing uncanny CGI stuff for live action movies like sort of became their thing. Just a few years before this, the movie Cats and Dogs came out, and it seemed that CGI technology had finally came to a point where we can see a dog movie where they actually try to pull something like this. You know, which reminds me of another Paul family flag. Like, they always tend to have, like, this strange sense of legitimacy to their movies. Like, this was an ABC Family TV movie, and it looks more expensive than a bunch of the stuff that came out theatrically that year. I mean, look how many people worked on this. I can't imagine the effort that went into this matching the financial return. And that is because the Paul family cares about art. Because it seems like very few up until this point really truly had the bravery to push aside the sad kid and just open with Pat Morita having a casual conversation with his dog with Chevy Chase's voice.
Here you go, boss.
Then boom, bow, wow! The dog fights off ninjas in a literal fist fight. They even include a villain with this creepy mouthy Jabberwocky's mask. Like, finally a little adrenaline for my poor dead heart. And then the cops come and whoa! Jamie Presley brings the Hollywood looks to this TV movie. I'll be clear that I'm glad that she's in this movie, but it's hard not to be distracted when she's like an 11 when everyone else is reaching for a 7. That's just the blessing of a movie that doesn't care about subtlety at all. This movie is trying so many things that it never even stopped to wonder if it was being weird or not. Like, a talking dog is nothing new, but these scenes of this dog acting like a human was just a little bewildering sometimes. And as expected, Jon Voight shows up as the obvious bad guy, and not only does he do this Dixieland accent the whole time.
Rule number 1. Unless you're a lawyer or a process server, you call me Hamilton.
He also has like a tiny little bun in the back of his head, and he wears clothes like these. Karate Dog's over here trying to explain why he can talk, and the movie basically just admits it doesn't make any sense and just ends the conversation.
Chin Lee was a great Zen master. He wanted me to talk. He willed it. Are you with me?
And I have to say, I know they wanted to juice those Chevy Chase credits, but I actually kind of wish this dog just talked a little less than he did. And you already know that we're not getting out of this movie without at least a little sexual tension between a dog and some other dog.
Oh, but you look like a dog who appreciates a woman with a little spoon.
Oh, I do.
And of course, a few intentionally inappropriate jokes.
I'm so high.
One of which was bad enough to make me fall out of my seat.
Ooh, hello. Watch it, buddy. She's underage.
I'll be 18 next month.
And, you know, I honestly felt like they did an honest job with not cutting corners and letting these bits play out in a relatively entertaining detective story. You know, we got stuff like talking computers and Mission Impossible stunts with the dog. Very elaborate set building that reminds me of 90s studio movies. But the absolute best part of this movie is Jon Voight. The story is he apparently has found this food that's going to make him live forever. And as the movie plays out, his character becomes more and more unhinged as the negative effects start to take its shape. There's one point in this movie where he actually puts himself in a dog racing cage and races the greyhounds he likes to bet on. This is movie magic. But there's this final rooftop battle between Karate Dog and a hormone-raging karate master Jon Voight.
Super lick.
You know, when I sought out these movies, it was really stuff like this that I was really looking for, and it's really a shame that it was such a slog to get to this point. This really isn't quite the level of sophistication Bingo had, but I do feel like it's leagues above these other movies. I think what makes sense is to put Bingo at the very top status and then put Karate Dog in A. Okay, moving on, here is Cop Dog, which was made in 2008. You know, you'd think as time passes and technology advances that these movies would start getting better. But the thing is that the 2000s was after the Air Bud explosion and the genre really started to replicate out of control. And I think we've already seen that this genre does struggle a little bit with originality. Like, do you really think that that's something that improved when there became like over a dozen dog movies coming out on DVD a year? I don't even think they got the same dog that's in this movie to hold up his badge for the cover. Oh, and let me guess, dead parents and a lonely kid? By this point, I don't know if it's the way this movie actually handles the grief stuff, or if I'm just like delirious from too much of this happening over and over again in these movies. But I honestly, I struggle to not laugh at these sappy moments in this movie. Like, instead of just going to his dad's grave to take a picture with a sick digital camera like his mom, he just sits in the car stroking this broken watch he pulled from his dad's death scene.
Robbie, you should get that fixed.
I don't remember exactly when it happened.
And guess what? Now the dog is also in grief with the kid, because he apparently was his police dog before the dad died. But okay, there's no way this dog was a police dog. This dog pays zero attention to any commands or discipline. Like, he just darts off, chases other dogs, rips up pillows, barks at food. But whatever, right? Like, we've set up for a movie, and now we're about to hopefully see this dog flash his badge at some point. But then the second they go out to see the place where his dad died, so, you know, they can be a little more sad for a little longer, the dog starts chasing these unsuspecting bad guys down in their truck, who somehow can't drive faster than this dog can run. And then, boo, what do you know? They're both dead now.
Go get him some water!
He needs some milk.
Please, just dig that grief hole deeper. The second this happened, like, I somehow knew this was going to be the exact same gimmick as my magic dog. This dog is going to come back to life and be invisible to everyone but the kid. Sure, like, they did do a little bit more with this bit. Like, this girl deserves an award for playing it so straight with a dog's tongue in her ear. Like, we just watched Karate Dog, and now we're back to this cheap trick they pulled 10 years earlier. Well, but at least this is the part of the movie that brings us to my favorite part of this whole thing, when the kid's dad's colleague gives him a dog whistle, and he utters this perfect line of dialogue.
It's silent. Just like them.
Now we get to see this kid's attachment problems get exacerbated as this dog just continuously does mysterious things that don't make much sense. And the people around just start accepting that he's losing his sanity with grief.
I get it now. That's a great place to have a nervous breakdown.
No!
The only comical relief that we can cling on to is when this kid and his friend follow through with like this really needlessly gross investigation, where we find one of the criminal's gum trees where he likes to stick all his used gum on like a weirdo. And so they, no joke, pick the gum off and chew it all up again to figure out this guy's favorite brands so they can then later stake out this store. Like, I don't know why, I'm typically not that squeamish, but this really made me cringe to watch. But like, truth be told, there you basically have it. Like, the only thing I really feel like I need to mention is there's a moment in the end when Ghost Cop Dog appears to steal the soul of one of the bad guys. Now, you can sort of figure how it all ends. Dog goes again into the afterlife, and Cowboy Dad gives us a little nod. I probably would prefer watching this over My Magic Dog, but like, would this exist without My Magic Dog? I am going to have to, I think I'm just putting this in C. So, for our last movie, we are jumping all the way to 2010 with The Dogfather. The real main reason I picked this is because of how cool this dog looks. After all these vanilla-ass dogs, I thought a bulldog would give us a little different vibe. But there's this phenomenon where the bar for a type of movie gets lowered just so much that it crosses this threshold and starts to become this lowbrow type of art.
You know just what I need when I'm feeling down. You have a way of turning things all around.
This is the period of time that is leading the way to a talking cat, which everyone knows and loves. And since we knew that this genre was never actually going to get good, I feel like The Dogfather is a movement in the right direction. There's something egregious to me about relatively talented people just sticking to familiarity. The whole setup, starting at the very first scenes, just gives you complete whiplash. It starts with all these goofy mob-looking guys sitting down with that awesome dog sitting there with them. But then I guess out of nowhere, this dog eats his boss's ring or something, and then this movie just landslides into the plot.
You know how much that ring means to me. Give it back and you live. Give me that ring back, alive or dead!
Like, what is this guy's problem? That can't be great for the dog, could it? Take it to the vet or just wait for it to poop it out. Don't have to threaten this thing's life. And there's just something about this kiss that seems so grotesque. So he takes off and finds his family, who honestly, they scored getting a purebred bulldog at the pound. Those things are thousands of dollars. The family drama that plays out from here is really the heart of the movie to me. And that's usually the worst part. So much of this felt like it came from a parallel universe. The interactions people have with each other is just awkward and uncomfortable.
Sure. Wonderful.
Are you sure that's enough food for Sonny?
Really funny, babe.
Check it out. The kid actually has both parents. But don't get too excited because this kid has a weak heart and is basically on the verge of death at all times.
It's so much fun, Dad.
No, but you're hurt.
And honestly, he's kind of a little jerk about it too. Like, the dad's worried about him and the kid's resentful about it. So he does stuff like pretending to fake die in front of his dad.
Josh. Christine!
In fact, the dad in this movie is sort of a tragic figure because as soon as the dog shows up, both his wife and son start acting like they're under his spell or something.
He doesn't know it yet, but you are the best thing that has ever happened to this family.
They start demanding things like the dog eating with them at the table, a perfect opportunity for one of these classic jokes.
Dog is ever going to be eating dinner at the table with us.
The dog jumps in bed with the dad and his wife, and this is the exchange they have.
He's trying to kill me.
Oh, please, he's smarter than that. He'd torture you first and then kill you, silly.
Honestly, from there, this movie is basically just this family losing love for their dad as they grow more and more obsessed with this dog. And to make it all worse, beyond just robbing him of his family's affection, the dog just straight makes this man's life even more miserable as he becomes the butt of many bumbling buffoonery jokes. It's the sort of dog movie humor that warrants silly music like this. Some of these scenes literally ended with the dad unconscious. The movie even went so far as to depict this man sticking his socked foot in dog poop. And I was pretty sure that depicting feces on screen warrants at least a PG-13 rating. There's these mobsters in this movie that are supposed to be finding the dog, and they're almost irrelevant to the story because of how stupid this movie made them. These are some of the dumbest goons I've seen in a long time, which is only exacerbated by their fake mobster accents.
Yeah, no problem. We was just playing with the dogs. Just messing around with the mutts.
Honestly, I was surprised to say I was glad to be able to mostly ignore them so I could just savor this bizarre family drama taking place. I mean, I'm talking as though I'm criticizing it, but I was genuinely riveted by a lot of this movie. It was paced far better than a lot of these mopey ones and crossed that threshold where I could no longer anticipate what was going to happen next. On a certain type of scale, this would absolutely be an A movie for me. But I think looking at the context of the rest, I think maybe it'll settle better into the B tier. The reality is just one poop sack is more valuable than 100 crying orphans. So there we have it. A sampling of some of the coolest dogs on the market. It's not a huge list, but it's one that covers multiple decades of the scene. There's really so many more, and you have to guess that there's at least a few more gems out there, right? So maybe we'll find out again soon.